Hi, welcome to another episode of Ellie Asks. Today I'm joined by Malcom. I just was trying to think how long we've known each other, Malcom. I think, we met at a networking event last Christmas. So
Yeah, good.
Yeah. So, well, where we are currently, so nearly a year, but by the time this goes out, sort of maybe like a year and a half. So, hey, happy year and a half anniversary of knowing each other. So yeah, Malcolm's another coach, and sort of like, oh, I know a coach, and somebody introduced me to, and we're like, oh yes, we trained at the same company, and so it was nice, almost like we found each other. It's like, oh, it's nice to have somebody who knows about coaching and can have similar sort of conversations around things. So we get together via Zoom in these times quite frequently to talk all things coaching and where our businesses are going and things like that. So he's been a huge support to me, and it's a great honour to have him as a guest on Ellie Asks as well. So Malcom, did you want to tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself and your business?
Yeah, Grad, thanks for asking me. I think it's a privilege to be on with you. I run a company called CounsellingWorx. Now, CounsellingWorx is a title that takes the practice and principles of youth work, because that's my profession, and applies them into various different aspects of the business that we work in. And two of those are CoachingWorx and CounsellingWorx. So coaching, people that are watching this podcast should by now know what coaching is all about, and very much thinking about the future and where you want to go, and what the possibilities are. Whereas counselling very much kind of looks backwards and begins to work with people to identify what are things that might be holding you back from moving into the future. And it's a really great thing to have those two forms of support. I'm conscious of not calling coaching therapy, because my wife, who's also our counsellor, will tell me off, because she spent a long time training to be a therapist. So she's far more qualified than I am, and has a lot more tools and resources to support and help people intervene. But what it does is that with CoachingWorx and CounsellingWorx, it really helps to start breaking down some of that stigma that's still around emotional health and well-being, because we can be working with businesses and business owners, and to be saying, actually, this is about coaching. But as they're beginning to chat about some things that are in their life, if there are areas that are holding them back, some things that have happened in their past, then we can be doing some therapy with them for a period of time, and then just coming back to coaching. And it starts to break down and unravel that whole kind of sense of, well, am I going to get my head read, or all that kind of negative stuff.
Yeah, look into my eyes. Don't it? I had somebody I used to work. Yes, I had somebody I used to work with who was like, she'd come, if I'd come into the room where she worked at one of the schools I worked at, she's like, don't be reading me. You're not reading me, are you? What are you saying? What are you thinking about me? What are you saying? I was like, I'm not. I'm just coming to ask you something about a lesson or a child or something like. And if she says something, she says, "Don't you start thinking anything? Yeah, don't you start analysing me." I said, "That's not what coaches do. It's not about that." She just makes me laugh. So I always tag her in my podcast and like, "Sarah, this one's for you." So I'll definitely tag her in this one and say, "Sarah, this is one's for you. You're mentioned in this one." So. Yeah, it's definitely not some sort of analysing or judgment around anything, is it? So it's I
think both person-centered counselling and coaching, they both come from a similar place, where it's very much about listening, and giving people that space to be heard, and reflecting back to them what is obvious to us that they're saying that perhaps isn't obvious to them as an individual, because they live with their thoughts and feelings all of the time. It's not some magical mystic art. It's just listening.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But it's amazing, isn't it? It's almost like you're going, it's not a magical mystic art, it's just listening, but it like is so much more than that, and actually is so. But the power is within the person who is talking, the person who's having the coaching. The power, we don't hold that power; they hold that power, don't they? They hold the power to change. They know exactly where they want their life to go. They might not know at that point in time, but we facilitate those questions and facilitate the thinking around things. So, so they hold the power. They make the change. Right, so thanks for that. Moving on to today's question. is, why am I doing the thing I am doing right now? And it's a bigger picture question rather than
why am I talking to Ellie on a podcast?
Why am I, or why am I listening to this podcast? Or why am I, it's a bigger question. I have a friend who listens to my podcast while she's mopping the floor. So I don't want her to be thinking, why am I mopping the floor? It's a bit bigger than that. It's a bit more long-term. It's a bigger picture type question, isn't it? And that's the way you're going to answer it. So why are you doing the things you are doing right now?
I'll probably cut straight to the chase and then maybe pull back and see the bigger picture from it.
Oh, okay, cool.
But it's all about time and making the most of time. In the last 3 years, I've really gradually understood just how precious time is. And I don't know if that's an age thing that happens when you hit your 40s and you start to think, actually, you know what's going on in life? And perhaps I've got fewer years ahead of me than I have before. But for me, it was definitely around my kids growing up and realizing that I am not going to get this precise moment ever again with my children.
Yeah.
And that dawning realization that moment, well, that's gone. Yeah. And that moment, that's gone. And it was, it's a little bit, I don't know if it's scary. I think it's become really powerful, actually, for me to be thinking I need to make the most of the minutes, the seconds, let alone the days and the weeks and the months and the years that I have. And it goes back, pulling back a little bit, about 3 years ago, I've been working within charities for about 17 years. It got to the point where working within the charity and leading a charity was really taking over my life. Even though you might have been within that work context, 9 to 5, your thinking time and your headspace was just constantly taken up with thinking about what's the best for the team that you're working with, thinking about what's best for the people that you're looking to serve, thinking what's best for the trustees, thinking about the future, thinking about strategy, thinking about funding, thinking about politics. Mind's just completely taken up. Yeah. That's it. And there was this dawning realization when my 7-year-old at the time, he's now 10, but he said, "Dad, I don't get to see you." I said, "What do you mean you don't get to see me?" What? He said, "Well, you're here. Bear in mind, this is 7-year-old. You're here, but you're not here." And it was like, oh, whoa, what's
sort of knife to the heart sort of scenario.
And it really was one of those ones where, hang on, it was one of those moments now that will stick with me for life. That's a clear turning point. You're here, but you're not here. And I was really fortunate with our 3 boys. My 2 eldest, I had the opportunity to kind of share parenting with them in the first 5 years. Because both Abby, my wife, and I worked for the same charity for a while. So she was doing kind of parenting and family work in the morning, and then I would be going in the afternoon doing youth work in the afternoon and evening. So we were able to really share the parenting with them, and I'm looking back, really valued that time. But then we moved to Grimsby in 2010 from the southeast. Don't hold that against us, by the way. And part of the reason for moving up was because we had 3 kids now, and moving into a different role meant that had a greater salary. We could get a better quality of life because we could afford the house, we could afford the mortgage. We could get by without having to split everything all the time.
Yeah.
But that came at a cost. It always that sense of, well, actually, yes, you might gain on the one front in terms of being able to afford your mortgage, and might gain in terms of Abby being able to stay at home with the kids. But for me, my loss, and this was what I realized when my 7-year-old said that, was actually I hadn't really bonded and formed that relationship with Micah as I had with my older 2. And actually, that was 7 years that had gone by. And in 7 years' time, you'd be 14, and he won't really want anything to do with me.
Yeah.
So the opportunity came up within work to take a backward step and to get out of that. Yeah, that was the start of beginning to think about, oh, how do we take control of the time that we have? So
yeah,
that was.
I mean, that's like almost very similar to my story, and which, you know, and if you've listened to the podcast before, I've talked about before about the fact that I used to be a teacher, and just you saying about this and this and this and this and the whirling around in your head, it's all that. I was there in the day, but I was working at night. But also, even when I wasn't working at my laptop, things are whirling around my head. I need to do this. I need to do this. Or that'd be nice for the children. Or that'd be nice for the children. Blah blah blah. So, and it took over, and I can remember, and I have probably said this on the podcast already, and forgive me if I have, and you've heard it and me rambling on about it, but it was such a pivotal moment that a colleague of mine was really struggling with workload, and I said, I hear you, I feel like teaching has stolen my life. And I was like, whoa. Somebody didn't say it to me, I said it, and it's not until I said it to her that it was like a bolt out of the blue for me. And I was like, what on earth are you doing? What on earth? If you're openly saying to somebody that it's stolen your life, why are you carrying on with something that is stealing your time from you? Like you say, it was time with my kids, time with my husband, and things like that. And I'm wondering as well, when you were talking and thinking, I often talk to my coaching clients around, it's a bit morbid, but you know how your whole deathbed type stuff, if you're on your deathbed, what do you wish you'd done more of? What do you wish you'd done less of? You know, and almost coming back to that question of, why am I doing the things I'm doing right now? Why am I doing those things? Am I doing it to support a future? Am I doing it, or am I just doing it because it's what I've always done? Or to afford, like you were saying, you know, to afford a house, or because actually, what is it that really matters?
Yeah, and that was the conversation when this whole thing happened, because it was blooming scary to take that step back out of this, what I now see as a perceived security of a job and a salary, because job security, there is no such thing as job security because you have a regular salary coming in every single month. Because any employer at any given time can be deciding that actually that job's no longer viable. We've seen it this year with the pandemic. How many secure jobs now are in the position where no one knows necessarily what the future is. So I'm very aware, in the midst of all this, I'm extremely privileged to being able to take that step back, to be able to reevaluate and think about what it was we wanted to do. But the question that we asked ourselves is, how much money do we actually need to be able to live on a month-to-month basis? Rather than thinking, well, we've got to pay for this and we've got to pay for that. It was the real question of sitting down and physically writing down, what are the things that we actually need to be able to get by? And suddenly when you looked at that figure, it wasn't so scary any longer, because you think, okay, well, that's how much it would pay the rent or the mortgage. That's how much we need for food all the time. That's how much we need for the kids to get the bus to school. Well, actually, why do they need to get the bus to school? Because I'm free, I can walk them to school. And all those kind of things started to think, well, actually, some of those costs are no longer needed. And suddenly then it was a case of, okay, well, what do we do to try and bring that money in? And one of the conversations that I had, Abby's just gone full-time within the counselling side of the business as well. So we had that conversation all over again just this summer gone. And it was probably a little bit easier because I've been on the other side of the fence now for a few years, to be able to realise that even if you start to see work drying up, you're in the position where you can begin to get out there and try and find that work yourself. And 20 hours in your business, rather than working for somebody else, is so much more valuable, because it's 20 hours focused on just making sure you get to that level to be able to pay what you need to pay to live today. So it was a real mindset shift to be thinking of, okay, rather than thinking too much into the future, is what do I actually need for right here, right now, to be able to live on a day-to-day basis? And then suddenly there's so much more free time to be able to really do the things that you love to do. And for me, that was spending time with the kids, but also getting involved in doing triathlon. which takes up a lot of time. But then, you know, getting engaged with the whole community of triathletes and all of the friendship and fun and love that there is within all of that, which, yeah, it's that shift and asking that question of what do we actually need has just changed our life.
Yeah. I'm interested in the bit that you said about I'm really privileged. I appreciate that I'm really privileged. So what do you mean by that? Is that just because is that a privilege, or is it that you've just decided to take control? I was just really interested in that.
Yeah, I guess the privilege is the sense that I'm fortunate that I grew up within a family who loved me and gave me a good foundation. And on that foundation, I was able to get educated. I was able to do a number of degrees, go and get lots of head knowledge and lots of learning, which has placed me in the position to be able to support other businesses and other charities and that kind of stuff. So from that perspective, and then also in terms of when the opportunity stepped back, I was able to leave that role with a certain amount of money in place to know that I had some security for a few months.
Right.
So that sense of that perceived sense of security, but also that underlying foundation, which gave me that kind of level of confidence to say, okay, things will be okay. That's not something that everybody holds and has. And I do that. I see that as a real privilege.
Right. I just didn't know whether you were seeing it as like, oh, it's a privilege, but actually I was just wondering whether it was just you going, no, I'm taking control of this, and whether it was you were privileged or you were lucky, or whether you made your own, but you'd kind of put things in place prior to taking control, I suppose, is what you're saying. More about
probably probably a bit of both.
The other thing that as you're talking about it, I'm wondering, you know, people who are listening who are going, I'd really love to do that, but around my house, but I like my big house, or I like my house where I am at the moment, and I like my car, and I like being able to go on big holidays, and I like, you know, I'm just wondering, what's your view on that? You know, did that come into conversation, I suppose, when you were talking to Abby about it, about how much money do we actually need? Yes, we need food. Yes, we need the kids to go to school, and yes, we need all that, and bills and things like that. But where did that sit with you with like your house and car and the luxury type stuff? Maybe I'm thinking.
Yeah, I guess that's where it comes down to that choice thing again. You know, actually, there is always a choice. Often when I'm coaching people, it's, oh, I've got no choice. I've got no choice. You've always got a choice. You always have a choice. It's just whether the consequences of that choice are something you are happy to live with or not.
Yeah.
And then another thing we often say, you know, that actually, you know, loss and gain are almost like conjoined twins. You can't have one without the other. And in any choice, it's always a case of evaluating, okay, by making this choice, what do I gain and what do I lose? And is the gain greater than what I might lose? And the gain in that context was that we would have that time back with our kids that we would never, ever have again, against the loss of perhaps, you know, not being able to go on holiday, not, in my case, run a charity, a large charity, which gave me a sense of real worth and self and value. But actually, I could do that in the future if I so chose to do.
You're not closing any doors. You're not closing any doors there, are you? By making this choice, it's not like I'm making this choice, and if life doesn't go quite the way I envisaged it, it doesn't mean that door's closed and locked and padlocked and deadlocked. So I suppose a little bit like me, if I wanted to go back to teaching, that door is still there. There's nothing to stop me from doing that. Almost, I feel that when I have coaching clients who do the same, but you know, but also say, but what if it's the wrong decision? What if it doesn't work out? And what, you know, almost like those things, the what ifs are stopping them from even giving it a go.
Right. Yeah. It's that fear of the unknown, but I wouldn't even say it's fear of the unknown. It's fear of the perceived. It's fear of the, I think I know what that looks like.
Yeah.
But actually, until you step into it, you don't really know what it looks like. And interestingly enough, in terms of you saying, you know, that the door's not closed, I could always go back. You're right, it's not, but I don't think I could go back into that world, because actually the time that being self-employed in this situation, or And it's not even necessarily self-employed, because actually sometimes I'll take on a short-term contract, which is within a salary, but I'm doing that because actually I'm making a choice to do that for a period of time, or I'm going to do that piece of work because actually it works for us, rather than just blindly taking on this role and almost becoming somebody else's human resource. I mean, it's what I call human resource management. Actually, are these things the things that make you come alive? Do they connect with who you are? Do you do this, are you taking on this work because actually you know it's something that connects with who you are? And there's some real, I don't necessarily want to use the word power, because I'm not quite sure that's the right word. But it's the value in the sense of of your control, that perhaps it is powerful.
And empowerment.
But maybe
empowerment.
That probably makes more sense. You are giving yourself that control. You're giving yourself that power to yes, it is power. Then because you're choosing that power. You have the power and control over your destiny and what it is that you are going to do, rather than doing what somebody else needs you to do because in exchange for that salary.
And I think I was just really interested in that whole, because I hear it a lot from my coaching clients, like you were saying, that people go, well, I don't want to do this anymore, but if I don't do it, I lose out on this and this. And it is that loss and gain, and looking at whether the gains or actually the losses can be positive as well, can't they? But Absolutely. If whether the losses or the gains or whatever, which stacks up, which is more important. And obviously we're both in that place that I've dropped a huge amount of money giving up teaching to be self-employed to begin with, but it wasn't about that. I talked a lot about being successful, and I don't know, and I worked out from having coaching and coaching myself through this, that I thought me being successful in my business was me earning loads of money. But it wasn't until I really thought back to why have I done this in the first place? Was it that I wanted to be a millionaire and have and go in lots of holidays where I laid on a yacht, for 2 weeks? No, it absolutely wasn't. It was about spending time with my children and my husband and my family and my friends, and not even just be, I suppose, a bit like you were saying, you were there, but you weren't there. I was there, but I wasn't there at all. I was not present at all, playing a game with my young children, with my girls. And I'd be always thinking, right, what planning I've got to do, what marking have I got to do, what do I need to do? And working my whole life around having my planning and my marking to do at a weekend and things like that. And the freedom is priceless. I earn £1 million. I feel like I earn £1 million. I feel like I'm incredibly successful. I feel like I'm multimillionaire, because I am incredibly successful in what I deem as being successful, as in I have loads of time with my children and I choose to work when I choose to work, and I love what I do, and I get to support people and help people to improve their lives. So do I have loads of fancy holidays? No. Do I care? No.
I think I've found too that I've learned to value the things that are just around me. Lots of people laugh at me and say I love living in Grimsby. And well, I grew up in the southeast of England, and it's there's a million people in Kent. There's 4 million people on the doorstep in London, and there's no space whatsoever. And to move up to here, to North East Links, where within a local authority, it's the same kind of area space as where I grew up in the Medway Towns in North Kent, with half the population, with the sea on one front and the hills on the other side, and tree-lined streets. I mean, I couldn't live anywhere else now. But I think, again, part of that is because I've got a lot more time to appreciate that. I remember a friend of mine who's self-employed always saying, I guess in some ways it was a bit of an informal coaching relationship I had with them, but they were self-employed, and they said you have so much more time when you're self-employed, because you're not spending time driving to meetings, you're not spending time around the water cooler having conversations, kind of thing. That actually, when you're self-employed, you know what work you've got to get done that day. And if that work takes you 3 hours, that's how long it takes you. And then you've got so much more done. But actually, when you go to a 9 to 5, how many times in a 9 to 5 do you genuinely get 3 or 4 hours core good work done? But how much time is wasted in between all of that when you're at work? And when you're, when you're self-employed, you can decide, actually, if it's 3 or 4 hours today, that's what I need to do. But actually, if I want to go and spend some time with the kids or do something that needs to be done in the house, I've got all of that extra time.
Your nails done, Malcolm? Have your nails done? That's what I did yesterday.
Well, you know,
there you go.
Yeah.
All because I'm self-employed.
But you're far more in control of that time, because you're not expected to be in one place from 9 to 5. And I think that's the difference, is that yes, you might set your own routine in terms of trying to work 9 to 5, but you're not expected to be sat at that desk all the time. And if you are, you're probably getting yourself a wee bit trapped.
Yeah. I don't necessarily. Sorry, go on.
Yes, so flipping back to that whole thing of cost and exotic holidays and all that kind of stuff. Because I've got so much more time, realize just how much we've got here, and a walk in the wolds up on Nettleton Top and all those kind of places. It's gorgeous. It's stunning up there on a beautiful day, and it costs you nothing.
Yeah, and I think, and I saw this from in the media, and I heard from people around me during full-on lockdown back in March to June. People notice things that they'd never noticed, noises and animals and, and things that they'd never noticed before, and things around them, because what they weren't on this treadmill or this hamster wheel of like, or I've got to steam it to work. I've got to, walk like an Olympic marathon walker, so quickly, because I need to get there because I've got a 9 o'clock, or I've got this, I've got that. Actually, when they went for their hour walks or their daily exercise, they noticed things they'd never noticed because they were just more present with it all. Yeah, it's that taking that time to step back. Also, when you were saying about working 9 to 5 I don't. But I'll work in an evening. Now, I always worked in an evening as a teacher because I had to. Because to do my job in the day, I had to do some hours in the evenings and at weekends. I now work at a weekend on my business, or in evenings on my business, because I want to. Because that means it affords me, I can go take the girls to school and I pick them up. So actually I do a really short day. And currently I only work 3 days a week because my youngest is still at nursery. So she goes 3 days a week. So I don't actually work 5 days a week, but the time is still the same amount of time. I just shift it around to suit me. Absolutely. Whereas if I was working a 9 to 5, I'd have to make sure I wouldn't be able to I wouldn't be able to take the girls to school. I wouldn't be able to pick them up and all that sort of thing. So actually the gain from that, being able to see the teacher, so if I need to or anything like that, it is, again, it's priceless. I'm a multimillionaire. I'm living my success. I think I said in my coaching session the other day, I'm living my success, and I'm living my best life, hashtag living your best life, because I feel like I am. Yes, I'm not earning oodles of money. Certainly not earning anywhere where like I was when I was in teaching, when I was in leadership in teaching, working full time. But I couldn't go, like you said, I don't think I could go back. When I said I could go back, I don't think I would ever want to go back, because the payoff is not worth it. No, that money is not worth the life I had during that time. It's pretty powerful, isn't it? It's quite what, sorry?
It's quite freeing.
Oh, freedom, yeah. Yeah, I think that, yeah.
I had someone get in touch with me the other week and said, have you seen this job? Have you seen it? Have you seen it? Yeah, you'll be great at it. And it was the first time, actually, I think in 3 years, I just thought, no, because there was always this kind of, it wasn't some kind of I'll talk about that moment with Micah, where he says you're here, but you're not here. That's the kind of point I look back to, but it wasn't straightforward. It took me a good 3 years to get away from this wrestling of, I need to get that perceived security back. I need to have that salary. So it is a process where you have to keep reminding yourself of what the gain is and what the benefit is. But I think I've probably detoxed from that now. I'm not so addicted to it all.
Yeah. No, I think you're dead right. I think I was the same. I certainly wasn't an overnight thing. It wasn't me when I could realize took me about 3 years as well, actually. I wonder whether that's a magic number. 3 is the magic number and all that, whether it took me about 3 years to go, no, enough is enough. I'm not doing this anymore. So almost like making that for the listeners listening who are going, yeah, it's all right for you. You made it. You made the jump, and yes, it's worked out for you. I want to do something different, but I can't. But like you said, there's always choices. It just is that loss and that gain, and also where, yeah, what you deem as really important, and why am I doing the things I'm doing right now? Am I doing it because I want to?
It's working out for us at the moment. I wouldn't ever say it's gotten to that point where it has worked out for us, because actually it may well be in 3 months' time that actually something needs to change. But right now, in this moment, today, this week, it's working. Yeah. Actually, it's bringing that income in that we need to be able to get by. Would I say I feel like I've made it, and I'm now, I don't know, I've now made it self-employed business owner. I get it's just a choice that we're making at the moment, rather than saying actually that's it for forever.
I don't know. I would argue that you have made it because you've made it because of your values of what you want from life. So for me, you've made it, and yes, you would change, but that's only like your comfort zone stretching to move to be something, to move further on and further on and further on and further on, just to push yourself and for personal growth. So we've come to the end of the podcast. This episode it's been brilliant. I know. Oh, wow. Like that. Swish by. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a really ace one. It's really one to people to think about. Why am I doing the things I'm doing? Is it because I want to, or is it because I feel like I should? Do I need to, or is it do I want to? What is it? What's going on for you around? And that can be around your job, because we've talked lots about jobs, but it doesn't necessarily have to be about a job, does it? It can be lots of different things within your life. So just want to say thank you again. Thanks so much for joining me. I will put all Malcolm's social media and websites and things on the podcast information and on Facebook, on my Facebook page. So if you want to get in touch with Malcom over any of the things that he has talked about around anything, he's great. I'd really recommend him. So just look there. Thanks again.
Cheers, Ellie.
Take care.